trying to figure out how I can work in some product placement into my videos. Probably doesn't help if you're not all that impressed with the product, does it? I assure you, I actually drank it too. Unlike like the NASCAR drivers, I call bullshit. They don't drink when they always come up with the camera and they're right there ready to drink, right? Not my favorite brand of caffeinated beverage, so that probably doesn't help. Probably no dice on the product placement, I guess. I'm just trying to figure out how I can supplement my income, work a little less hard. I wanted to do a mini rant video. I've been working very hard in the shop trying to get ready for holidays, so I haven't had a chance to do any videos with any kind of content. But there are a few things that have been nagging at me, so if you'll bear with me and allow me a mini rant, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be kind of all over the map. So I'm going to start with the first thing I wanted to talk about is, for those of you who aren't aware, in our province here in Canada, we are currently undergoing a teachers' strike. And this is something that seems to happen periodically. It always bothers me. It's kind of frustrating, especially as a bit of a, I don't know what you'd call me, a wannabe anarchist, I guess, or an ideological anarchist, I guess, as someone who sort of goes along with the status quo, but ideologically, that's sort of where I'm at. That's where my head's at. And so, you know, these things always kind of bother me a little bit. And it's kind of interesting to watch the support for the teachers as it changes, because this strike started before the summer holidays, and then the summer holidays came and everybody just sort of went about their holidays, those who get holidays during the summer. And then as school was about to go back in session, the talks are ongoing and the teachers are back on the picket lines, but with a lot less parental support than they had previously, understandably so. You know, there were a lot of parents going out to the picket lines with the teachers beforehand, and there's a lot less of that. I noticed the rhetoric on Facebook is ramping up. A lot of parents are getting upset, and I think that's something that you obviously need to be aware of when you're on that side of the dispute. That, hey, the support you have, that's not going to, you know, it's got a shelf life. It's not going to last forever. And the more you put those parents in a bad position and they start to think about their children missing school, you know, the less of that support you're going to get. One of the concessions, here's the rant part. One of the concessions that the government has made to parents is that they are now going to give them, I believe it's up to $40 per day per student that's of the sort of daycare age for daycare. As a taxpayer, that's kind of frustrating. For one thing, it kind of illuminates to me, it's like a tacit admission that school is daycare, right? For one thing. For another thing, again, as an anarchist, you can make the case to me that I should pay for school. You could make, you know, that case could easily be made to me on many different levels. One avenue I can think of would be, hey, one day I'm going to retire and I'm going to benefit from a healthy economy that's going to be there to help to fund that retirement income that I'm going to be requiring, you know, government pension and that sort of thing. Regardless of whether or not I've earned that in my working years, it's still going to require a healthy economy to actually have the money to pay it. Because unfortunately, I think those things are kind of defunded, right? The general revenues is what's used. It's not a separate. Anyway, so that you could make that case that I should pay for education because I benefit from the healthy economy that it stems from it. But to then, you know, so in that sense, as a taxpayer, I'm paying for something. I'm paying for the education of our youth. And I'm not currently getting what I'm paying for. And then those funds are being redirected to pay for the daycare expenses of all these children. And yeah, I got a bit of a problem with that. I think that's kind of fraudulent in a way to redirect those funds. And, you know, I mean, yes, I have some compassion for the parents who suddenly have these children that they've got to deal with, but I didn't choose to have those children, right? None of this was my choice. Those are still their responsibility. And I just think it's a little bit crazy to redirect these funds to the daycare expenses of these parents, because that's not what I'm paying for. That's not what those funds are supposed to be used for. Additionally, I think it's a little bit of a problem paying these parents, because I think they're going to become a little bit more complacent when it comes to the strike because they got some government cheese rolling in, right? And I think it removes what should be a natural pressure there on the teachers and the teachers union and the government, of course, to come to an agreement. And I don't like the idea. I think it's actually better if the parents feel a little bit of pain here. I think it's a little bit better if that happens because it keeps those natural pressures on the parties to bring this to a close. And keeping in the vein of school teachers, and I just want to preface this by saying, if you're not a teacher that behaves this way, then this video isn't about you. I'm not here to attack all school teachers. However, that having been said, at least where I live, it's kind of common knowledge amongst people who are in business that school teachers tend to be sometimes the worst customers. And I had an experience the other day that just kind of blew my mind. It was a new customer, it's a school teacher, and they had been referred to me not in the normal way. I've got a very wonderful core clientele that I never have any problems with. And I get referrals periodically, and if they're a referral from one of my good group of core customers, then the referral is always going to be good as well. Good people refer good people. This was someone who came, I get referrals sometimes a little bit more peripherally through maybe one of the auto parts stores that has suggested me to someone, or I do some work for some warranty companies, and sometimes a customer will call the warranty company looking for a shop in a local area, and they'll give them my number. This person had been to several shops trying to fix a particular problem with their anti-lock brakes. So it's a serious problem, right? It's to do with their brakes. And a lot of parts have been thrown at this vehicle. Nothing has fixed it. It's one of those, really rare intermittent problems that a lot of shops have difficulty fixing. So she comes to me, and I spent about 45 minutes working on the car, a scan test, road test, putting it up on the hoist, testing the sensors, and everything was actually performing okay that day. I was really trying to just assess it. How am I going to approach the diagnosis on this car? And I mentioned to her that, it may need another sensor. And at that point in time, how I found out that she is a school teacher, she said, well, I get a 30% discount at the auto parts store. A couple of things about that. First of all, if you really think that you are getting a legitimate 30% discount at the auto parts store through the Teachers Federation or the school district or whatever, off of their regular retail price, you're probably not fit to teach children, right? Because that's not what they do. Now, I don't know if she knows this or not, or if she understands that the 30% off is off sort of an inflated retail price that nobody actually pays. But to come into a shop where, she's really asking me, she's begging me, listen, I've been to all these shops. I really need your help. I need this car fixed. It's brakes. It's important. I love this car. At the same time, she's engaged. She's in the middle of a wage dispute herself to say, I'm here to undercut your profit, right? Oh, well, I get a 30% discount at the auto parts store. Now, I didn't push it with her. I actually just said, well, I can probably match that price. Partially because she's a new customer, but also because I'm now in the testing phase. When somebody says something like that to me, because my core group of customers would never do that. They understand. You don't take your own steak to a restaurant, right? I can't stay in business. Just for anyone who deals with a mechanics shop out there who doesn't understand this, most mechanic shop can't stay in business on labor alone, right? We have to make money on parts as well. We have to have a markup on parts. There's nothing wrong with that. That's the business world. That's how it works. You don't take your own steak to a restaurant. They are charging you both for the preparation of the meal that you're eating, but also they have a markup on the food itself. They couldn't stay in business if it were not the case. So anyway, I'm kind of now in the testing phase with her because she's a new customer, because she came to me from a different referral than my normal cozy referral from another good customer. So I'm kind of testing her a little bit now. I'm watching what she does. And because the car wasn't really acting up, she said to me, what would you do to try and diagnose this? And I told her what I would do. I said, really what I'm going to need is I'm going to need you to leave the car with me for a few days. I'm going to have to swap the sensor wires at the computer, and then I can see if the problem follows the channel or if it stays with the sensor. It means I'm going to have to drive your car a little bit, maybe use it as a shuttle vehicle, like use it as if it were my own for a few days, because it takes a while for this problem to occur. And I'm going on holidays. And so she said, well, maybe what we'll do then is we'll just let it develop, because it's doing it quite rarely now. And if it gets worse, when you're back from holidays, I will call you and we will get it booked in. And I said, sure, that's fine. And as soon as I dropped the car down and pulled it outside, her demeanor completely changed. And I knew what was happening. And again, this is part of the test, although it's still hard not to take it personally when people do this. But I wanted to see what she would do. And her demeanor changed. She got very fidgety, very nervous, and she couldn't get in that car fast enough and drive away without asking, how much do I owe you? How do we work payment? Could I pay you in the future when if I bring the car back? None of the above. And like I said, it's kind of a test on my part. Obviously, I could have, when she first showed up, say, my base diagnostic is going to be $45, and then it goes from there, which is one of the lowest around. I know that for a fact. But again, I sort of wanted to test and see where this goes, because that's good information for me. If she never comes back, I've dodged a bullet anyway. If she does come back, then I'm going to be very careful at that point in time to lay it all out, the costs up front, and I will say, I still have an outstanding diagnostic charge from the previous time you were here. And if she balks at that, then I know to send her on her way. Still hard not to take it personally, but need I remind you, once again, this is a school teacher in the middle currently of a wage dispute and is willing to dine and dash. I'm not sure where else this happens in the retail market, right? Where someone comes to a business, makes use of their services, and then leaves without paying, without saying a word. It's a real pet peeve. Yeah. Okay, so enough with the school teachers. Here's another little minor pet peeve, a little mini rant about Bill O'Reilly. As some of you know, I watch Bill O'Reilly kind of for the comedic value. Sometimes if my blood pressure is too low, then I'll watch Bill O'Reilly. That usually fixes that. Occasionally, there's a little bit of alignment ideologically, but it's not very often. It's just kind of interesting to watch him. And I've also noticed an awful lot of, I don't know what you want to call it, grammar police and spelling police and that sort of thing on YouTube, but also on television. And I find it interesting to watch the way in which people correct other people. But one of the things that Bill O'Reilly does is he's got a few phrases that really bother him. And apparently on his show, he's got a running deal where, if somebody says one of the things that he's kind of like outlawed, right? What a Nazi, right? I mean, people aren't even allowed to use their own language. He finds them. I don't know if it's dollar or whatever, it's like a swear jar kind of idea. And one of the phrases that he really, really objects to is at the end of the day. If anybody says at the end of the day, even if he has a guest on there and they say, well, at the end of the day, Bill, he'll right away, he's in there and he's like, nope, you're not allowed to say that on this show, et cetera, et cetera. And I find it interesting because for one thing, it's actually, language is all about communication, right? So as long as we can effectively communicate, the Nazi stuff is pointless, right? Because languages morph anyway, and they morph naturally. And so as long as we're able to communicate, it kind of doesn't matter, right? At the end of the day is a useful phrase. People use that as a substitute for, in the aggregate, or, everything distilled down, or, in conclusion, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody knows when you say at the end of the day, they're not waiting for whatever that is, 5 o'clock or something. They know what that means. They know that you're saying sort of in conclusion, or all things boiled down, et cetera, et cetera. It's a useful phrase. People know what it means. So it's useful for communication. But what I find interesting is to listen to Bill's his own. He'll say the ISIS guys, they're blowing up, this, and they're doing and they're doing this, and they're doing that, and they're doing the other, and it's like, well, how nondescript is that? What is the this? What is the that? What is the other? These are all just fillers, right? To make it sound like there's more there than there is. And he does this a lot. He'll name the thing that someone's doing that he doesn't like. And then he'll say, and they're doing this, and they're doing that, and they're doing the other. Well, these are all just fillers. They actually don't mean anything, right? So I think it's kind of interesting that here's a guy, he apparently was a school teacher. Oh, I guess I'm not finished with the school teachers. This is the school teacher edition. He's got these things that he objects to that actually are useful in language, that they perform for us, they work. And then he uses these other things, which actually, in some way, they're kind of sophists' tricks, right? to make it sound like something is worse than it is by tossing in these fillers as a replacement for stuff that I guess doesn't exist, right? Like I said, I think it's kind of a sophist's trick. I'm hitting up to 15 minutes. So I'm just going to allude to one of my other pet peeves, which I may do another video on, and that is what I would call the ultimate special pleading. And it has to do with people discrediting other people for things sort of out of hand, but then laying claim to some sort of automatic credibility in the same arena themselves, just because it's them saying it. And so I'll leave you with that. You can think about that. If you have anything to say about what I've said in this video, you can do that down below. If I get a chance, I'll engage with you. Thanks as always for watching.